All right, so the National Assembly is holding a debate on Youth Day. The debate is themed Youth Power, Growing South Africa Together in a Time of COVID-19. Let's take you live now to Parliament.
Virtual platform. I welcome the honorable members to the National Assembly. Please join us. Honorable members, those are your future members here. The Secretary will read the first order of the day.
Debate on Youth Day, Youth Power, Growing South Africa Together in a Time of COVID-19.
Honorable K.D. Mahlati.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, honorable members, the South African youth in particular, Dumelang, Sanibonani, Abshen.
Please attend to that intervention by that honorable member for the future. We will deal with her when she next comes here. Go ahead, honorable member.
Thank you very much, honorable Deputy Speaker. Thousands of South African youth wake up every day to the reality of unemployment, poverty, and inequalities. These are the socio-economic realities of an unequal society informed by numerous factors. South Africa as a country is not immune from these global dire economic challenges. However, the ANC-led government has never shied away from its responsibility to secure economic viability for its youth. It has led from the front through massive tangible youth development programs. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the 2020 Youth Month is celebrated under difficult conditions of lockdown. A lockdown brought to our shores due to the global pandemic of coronavirus, which on its own has deepened the socio-economic crisis within our communities, more especially for the youth. Even under these difficult conditions, we remain optimistic that our country will recover and that our current interventions by government will ease the burden of poverty and unemployment. Like the youth of 1976, the youth of South Africa must not dig their heads in the sand, but rise to the occasion that requests positive youth activism. It is during these times, Deputy Speaker, that we must draw inspiration from the past youth generations that have rejuvenated the struggle for emancipation of colonized nations across the world. It is the youth who propelled the liberation movement in South Africa to engage in an armed struggle against racism apartheid government. It is the student of SASO who kept the fighting spirit against apartheid when liberation movements were banned. It is the youth of 1976 that demonstrated and revolted against apartheid government Bantu education system which seek to enslave blacks as second-class citizens. We should also draw from the struggles of Fees Must Fall and many other movements led by South African youth which have led to the fundamental change in access to higher education for the poor and the missing middle. It is the collective action of youth across the world that ensure a radical shift in social conditions of majority of the South African affected by poverty and unemployment. Honorable Deputy Speaker, despite the youth nature of our current population as a country, the youth are at the receiving end of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. But we say nothing for the youth without the youth. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the budget of our government does reflect inclusivity of youth population. Programs of our government are primarily youth-focused, with basic education, Department of Higher Education, Health taking the lead. Gone are those days when young people will be celebrated in June, as if they cease to be young on any other month besides June month. We remain vigilant in monitoring the work of government on its programs, more especially on job creation, youth entrepreneurship programs through youth set aside. It is in line with the notion of supporting SMMEs owned by young people. Chairperson, Deputy Speaker, manufacturing and agriculture will be the key economic drivers in the next decade. We therefore welcome economic interventions by government programs such as NARISEC, Contractor Development Program, CWP, and EPWP. However, some of these programs are poverty alleviation programs and remain temporary interventions. The youth of this country require the necessary sustainable skills to continuously cater for their needs. The new approach on NARISEC, as per the reviewed policy, brings us closer to what the young people of this country are yearning for. This program will not only provide skills, but prepare young people to be farmers through veterinary, food and safety skills. We remain hopeful that these young people will be amongst the first beneficiaries of expropriation of land without compensation when it finally kicks in, and it will happen in our lifetime. Deputy Speaker, as we work tirelessly to save the academic year, young people in the remote areas are asking very critical questions. A young person by the name of Kwaito Valashia from Kharib district, a rural municipality in the Free State, has no means of connectivity due to network challenges. His studies are therefore continuously interrupted. This is the same young man who continues to assist his community in delivering food parcels to the needy during these difficult times. A young activist who assists young people to apply for NSFAS and bought school shoes for many children in Roxville. Deputy Speaker, such young people are needed in this country. Those who do not just dig their heads in the sand but continue to assist others. Even during these difficult times, we need such hope from our young people. Deputy Speaker, Naledi Ditsobotla has also asked a difficult question that the PPEs have not arrived at her daughter's school. What is to be done? Much as we continue to support government in its work and its good intentions, we will be the first in the ANC to ask these difficult questions. As the ANC, we are drivers in ensuring that we hold our government accountable and continue to alleviate the conditions of all young people yearning to build a prosperous South Africa. Deputy Speaker, the brutal killing of women in this country cannot go unnoticed. The scourge is too huge, and this must come to an end. As women of this country, we must never apologize for being women. The youth should be in the center of confronting gender-based violence, which has a thirst to take life out of a woman, be it at the workplace, suburb, or township, or our villages. Indeed, Black Lives Matter. It is a fact that Black people continue to suffocate and die with no remorse in the 21st century. The inhuman killing of George Floyd is a glaring reminder of a pain and suffering that Black lives face. This killing is one of the most amongst many. Honorable Deputy Speaker, as the ANC, we are following with eager the brutal killing of Collins Khoza. His death must never go in vain. May his soul rest in peace. Chairperson, as we adapt to the living conditions of coronavirus, we must be forward-thinking. Post the pandemic, the youth should innovate sustainable initiatives in responding and reposition our economy to be the best, to best create a better future for all. As I conclude, Honorable Deputy Speaker, let me take this opportunity to salute young South Africans working as volunteers, health workers, teachers, and all those who contributed towards fighting the pandemic. Kgonaga ya Cuba. Lefatshe la boagi ba ga Komandanta Fidel Castro, re a leboga. Le rutile botho le tlhompho. Thank you for providing healthcare services to our nation. Deputy Speaker, I hereby stand here to send my sincere appreciation to the farm workers, whom when we were all locked down, they were toiling the soil. Deputy Speaker, problems confronting humanity require complex solving capabilities. They require a great deal of innovation. It is this youth that will take South Africa, and the rest of the world for a better future of shared prosperity. But this youth needs preparation, they need support, they need guidance, they need sophisticated competencies. We're saying as African National Congress, we want to congratulate the NYDA board, the outgoing board, on the stunning work that they've done over the years. They leave this board a NYDA that is revolutionized. We are saying to them, This is an institution that was led by young people. This is an institution for young people. In the past 3 consecutive years, this particular board has actually brought about 3 clean audits over the years. We want to congratulate the outgoing board, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Mpiti.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I would like to acknowledge and honor the youth of 1976. Long may their spirit live to inspire us always. Today, we remember their footsteps and their spirit as we labor around our generational issues as young people in South Africa. In South Africa, there are 2 most important days in your life: the day you are born and the day you realize kushubile. Slalo Izolo, I spent my day in Buhle Park, where I met with young people who wanted me to bring their stories to your urgent attention and the urgent attention of this House. I met Edwin Makubo, a 24-year-old who looks after 5 siblings, the youngest being his sister, who is 4. They live in an old abandoned house along the train track of Buhle Park. He wanted me to tell you that he is cold and unemployed and losing hope. Ntabiseng Nkosi is 23 years old. Ntabiseng lives with 4 of her siblings. Her mother passed away and her father left them. She looks after her 3 siblings and her own child. She's unemployed and lives off her child grant. She has been waiting to hear back from the indigent grant application she applied for last year. She is getting desperate. Themba Mguni, a 19-year-old, is one of 5 siblings. Both parents have passed away. He dropped out of school and has joined his 4 other siblings in the unemployment line. He wanted me to tell you that he wants to complete his schooling, and at least he wants to get a skill that he can use in our economy today. These are the few stories of young people, but the many realities of young people in this country. If indeed this ANC government is serious about being responsive to the challenges of young people, they will answer the calls of these young people who have asked me to speak about their stories today. Honorable Deputy Speaker, today we will listen to every ANC speaker like the one before tell us what they tell us every year. They decorate the painful realities of young people with the phrase that we hear all the time: progress has been made, but what? But what has been done for the young people that require the assistance from this government? We won't hear what has happened to the 77 commitments that were made at the Job Summit in October 2018. How are these commitments going to help young people of Buhle Park? What we won't hear from this government is what action is being taken to give the young people of Stegspruit, KwaZulu-Natal, Mjigelweni, the work readiness training and skills development that they require to meet the economic opportunities of this country. What we won't hear, Honorable Deputy Chairperson, is how this government plans to deal with the many young people who over the years have been rejected by the economic of this country and are now suffering from depression. What we know, Deputy Speaker, is that the medium-term budget policy statement only mentions youth once, and that only appears at the definitions section. As if unemployment is not bad enough for young people in this country, we now have to deal with the frustration and the anxiety of having to inherit an incapable state that is at the brink of economic collapse. Now, let us not be fooled. This economic collapse was happening long before COVID-19. Deputy Speaker, the truth is, under the ANC government, young people will become middle-aged, still trying to repay and rebuild this economy. Perhaps it might not be as bad at that time because we might have ministers who are actually in touch with the issues of our communities. As always, the DA will advise and give guidance because we want the country to succeed. Young people deserve that. So we call on government, number one, to ensure the re-stimulation of the employment tax incentive. The ETI is a direct intervention in the labor market aimed at stimulating demand for youth labor. The youth wage subsidy implicit in the ETI lowers the cost of the young, inexperienced worker to the employer without lowering the wages of workers themselves. Two, we are asking this government to provide targeted support for micro-entrepreneurs in the informal economy. We must ensure that we must foster sector support for job creation that this environment provides. 3, we need to focus on expanding support and incentives for youth-owned businesses and cooperatives. The Western Cape government and the City of Cape Town have created youth hubs in the City of Cape Town where young people can develop their CVs, find internships, complete job ready, and have social services that help with substance abuse and personal problems. These youth cafes provide skills development and support in the digital training, business entrepreneurship, event management, and project management. Imagine having these centers in our rural areas across the country. Deputy Speaker, I believe it was the late Ubaba Umkhulu Vusumazulu Credo Manto who once said, a truly democratic country is one that uses spiritual talent and the heritage of its people to feed the hungry and clothe the naked. I am here to confirm my belief in his words and argue that it is young people who are the spiritual talent and the heritage of our great nation. It is the young people of South Africa that will unshackle this country from the pessimism, poverty, and passiveness that we have become accustomed to because of the ANC government. The youth hustle does continue, and it is the youth of South Africa who will continue to confront these challenges unapologetically to seek out the solutions that we require in our government. Honorable Deputy Speaker, it is clear that we cannot knock on the door of this government. It has left young people with no choice but to dollar what we must. We must be clear the NYDA has failed. Right now, the NYDA is already without opportunities to deliver to young people. We need change and we're going to demand it now. Thank you very much.
Honorable Chirwa.
Now we are better. Now we are better.
Order. Honorable members, that freedom over that mic of yours must not be abused. Please don't do that. Honorable members, we now call for Honorable Chirwa. If we proceed that way, there's going to be disorder here, and we will not allow it. Honorable Chirwa.
Thank you. Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Revolutionary greetings to the Commander-in-Chief of the Amanda Malema, the Deputy President Nyeko Shivambu, the Chairperson Tombo Vuyo Mente, the officials, commissars, fighters, and ground forces of the EFF. As the economic freedom fighters, we take this time to honor the youth of 1976. We remain inspired by the courageous young men and young women who chose to fight the big, white, and heartless thugs in uniform, armed and in power, and not be dismayed by their weapons nor their age. Our courage to confront thugs and murderers who are in political power and uniform is mired and taken from their courageous acts. If the black youth of 1976 and that of 2020 could be in the same room today,
Honorable Member,
Honorable Deputy Speaker, during a global pandemic.
Honorable Chirwa, hold on. Honorable Memele.
May I address you on a point of order, sir?
Yes, sir.
So we try to create the impression or facilitate that this is Parliament. If you're going to allow members to use different backgrounds, regardless of their party political things, we may get into trouble because others would use perhaps other things to make different points.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a specific background given that indicates Parliament. This is Parliament, this is not a party political event. Thank you.
Yeah, the order is sustained. Honorable members, you must change your backgrounds to the Parliament background. There will be no exception accepted. Go ahead, Honorable Chirwa.
If the black youth of 1976 and that of 2020 would be in the same room today, 26 years post-democracy during a global pandemic, COVID-19, they would have more similarities than differences. Both have protested against Afrikaans as a medium of instruction. Both know the injustice of access to free, quality, and decolonized education. Both are squashed in townships and rural areas while white people...
Honorable Chirwa, please, the order has been sustained about the background you are using there. And we would like to proceed. Honorable members, if it is not technically possible to be done immediately by honorable members here, it must be done. Yeah.
Honorable Speaker.
Well, you can't just ignore a decision of the House that has just been made. Yeah. That's all we are requesting you to do.
Speaker.
Okay, go ahead if it does.
Honorable Speaker, on a point of order.
What's the point of order, honorable member?
What is wrong with the background of the youth of 1976? Is that the fact that it's irritating the FF class, the murderers of the regime of 1976?
Honorable member.
What's wrong with that background?
What's wrong is...
There's nothing wrong with the youth of 1976 as a background. It's what we are commemorating here today. It's a result of us having this conversation and the deliberations we're having today. So what is wrong with that background?
Honorable member, you don't do that again. And I suggest we proceed because I'm told this has changed. No one is saying anything about the youth of 76 not being appropriate. We are saying Parliament right now.
You are saying it's inappropriate to have it as a background. Why are we having this debate then today if that background cannot be put up? It's a reminder of the brutal murder by the FF plus people.
Honorable member, you are proceeding and getting out of order. I reject that with the contempt it deserves, the implications you are throwing around there. We are proceeding on the grounds that that background is changed and we will proceed with it in that manner. Let's go ahead.
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
No, honorable members, can we proceed?
On a point of order, Deputy Speaker.
I have ruled on this matter and the rules require that when a ruling has been made, you don't enter it.
When are you afraid of white people?
Honorable members, I have made a ruling on this matter and I'm not debating it.
You must...
Man, you are cowards, man. You are cowards.
Honorable member, don't tempt us to say things that are inappropriate in the House. You can
say
honorable member,
don't care. You can say whatever you want to say.
Honorable member, this is Parliament.
The reason we are having this debate today
just
is
behave.
Because of attitude.
Honorable member, just behave.
Say whatever you want to say. I'm not going to be ashamed.
We are afraid of white people.
We're not ashamed of the 1976 youth like you were
afraid of white people. That's why we are taking that road.
White people murdered us in the streets.
The same pictures are in Parliament walls. The same pictures to be the background of Naledi Chirwa in the walls of Parliament.
Honorable members, you are breaking every single rule in the House now. You will not want other members. You are not going to.
Why?
You are not
afraid
going
of
to
white people. You listen to white people a lot.
Honorable member,
with 1976 background.
You are a member of this House. You took an oath here and claimed that you would obey the law and all other laws in the House. You are violating them in the remarks you are making now.
This thing for violating South Africa. Nifihla amaqiniso. I-youth ka-1976 namanje into ayilwela khona okukodwa ku-right okwenzakalayo iyahlupheka. Why ningafuni ukukhulunywa nge-background?
Honorable member.
Awuthule nawe lapho.
Honorable member.
I-background nje ngeke siyeke masisaphila.
Out of order, Mkhalip.
Honorable members.
Hayi wena man ngathi okukodwa wani sababelungu sababelungu basifuna la
I can tell you that.
The people who are in charge of this meeting, can you mute these people? And I won't have them again.
Rupert.
What kind of rude MPs are these? I can't believe it. Honorable members,
you removing the youth of 1976. That's racism.
Honorable members,
take back VBS.
What's racist about that? Just explain what's racist about.
Honorable members, don't allow anybody to speak. Switch off their mic. Just switch off their mic.
We are wrong.
They must only speak. They must only speak if they are allowed to do so.
You are not going to treat us like children. You are not going to do.
Honorable member, you are behaving like children right now. Right now you are behaving like children. You are all speaking from the same party, saying the same thing, irrespective of the ruling in the House. Your member is suspended as a result. She is not able to speak because you are interrupting her with your propaganda. The rules have been decided in this House and they will be applied. No exception. Go ahead, Honorable Chirwa. And
Both
tell them
the
not
youth
to
of 1976 and that of 2020 are squashed in townships and rural areas, while white people enjoy the benefits of land theft. Both were and are reduced to menial jobs or no jobs at all to sustain the trenches of white supremacy. Both die to lack of quality health care. Both are landless. Both die at the hands of the police for justice, demanding minimum wage, fees to fall, Afrikaans to fall, and their families are evicted like animals in informal settlements. This even during a global pandemic. Both are haunted by the catastrophe of gender-based violence and femicide. Majority of these victims being black women and the LGBTQ. Both still raise their hands begging the state and society acknowledge that all lives and all black lives matter.
I said that you proceed on the understanding that you change off your background.
I'm almost done. Can I finish? I'm almost done.
No, you won't finish until you remove the picture. We agreed here, the ruling has been made. There's no question about where Parliament stands in relation to matters of students of 1976. There's no question about it. But when we approve rules in the House, they will be enforced and must be followed, irrespective of who you think you are. Change the background and proceed to speak.
Year in and year out, the EFF has freely given economic, social, and political solutions in this House. And yet President Ramaphosa pretends to be begging for solutions from the youth. The youth is right here. The youth is the EFF, and this, amongst many others, is what the youth is saying and proposing as solutions. Number one, bring back level 5 lockdown and avoid further deaths of innocent people, and use the money meant to ready buildings to give to the poor and for job security. This government has even failed to inform the people that when one recovers from COVID-19, their chances of dying from heart failure and strokes shortly thereafter increase. Educate the police on gender justice and establish specialized law enforcement units to deal with women-related crimes, socialization of communities, response to victims, court intervention, and instill harsher sentences for gender-based violence and sexual assault. Engage custodians of tradition, faith leaders, and cultural practitioners to find means to combat the oppression of women and patriarchy perpetuated by these very institutions. Increase mental health facilities and resources, and integrate programs responding to substance abuse as an element of mental health issues. Pass legislation that will ensure that all government departments and all public institutions employ a minimum of 40% of people between the ages of 18 and 35. Pass legislation that will ensure that all government departments and all public institutions spend 50% of their procurement budget on youth-owned businesses. Introduce free, quality, and decolonized education for all, advancing topics pertaining to indigenous knowledge, sovereignty, and economic freedom in the curriculum. Data must fall. People's jobs are withering away because of this pandemic. Invigorate content creation and science and technology. Today, the top entrepreneurs globally in technology are currently 8 men, 2 Chinese, and the rest of them are white. Support entrepreneurs in this sector, like the Libra Lemok, the first black and owned township cell phone manufacturing company in the country in Soshanguve today. You have not made this a priority because it will once again highlight racial disparity in regards to mere access to the internet. The 5G infrastructure that has been in South Africa for over 10 years is monopolized. Break the chain of monopoly and defend youth participation and leadership. End the tendering system and establish state-owned companies. Provide them with strategic and financial support. A state-owned housing construction company, road construction company, cement company, mining company, and state-owned banks. You encourage the youth day in and day out to take the fort. And then you respond to their activism, their rage and discontent with your governance, the same way the apartheid regime did to the youth of 1976. The ANC government has in fact physically defended colonial statues more than it does and has for black women's lives. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Numalo of the IFP. From at large.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. hope I'm audible.
You are. Go ahead,
Deputy Speaker. 2020 marks the... I am. Thank you. 2020 marks the 44th anniversary of the historic Soweto uprising that began in Soweto in 1976 on the 16th of June and spread right across the country like a wildfire. This uprising was led by young people across South Africa who could no longer bear the unjust and discriminatory education policies of the apartheid government. This day seeks to honor those students who sacrificed their lives and their safety in 1976, all while seeking to uphold their human dignity, equality, and their right to quality education. This year, unlike the previous years, we are faced with a hollow celebration as the world finds itself in the middle of a pandemic due to COVID-19. Indeed, even without the pandemic, there will be little to celebrate as young people of South Africa. According to statistics, South Africa, approximately 8.2 million South Africans which are young are out of jobs. They are not employed. These figures are undoubtedly increasing since there's been a lockdown at the end of March 2020 this year. Young people are more likely to be engaged in informal employment, meaning that the pandemic has hit hard on the young people of this country. It will be important to prioritize opportunities for young South Africans when looking to rebuild our economy as it has been tripping from failure to failure, as we've seen. Government agencies like the Youth Employment Service and the South African Youth National Development Agency have been unfortunately silent on this time of our country. This is concerning the step in for the youth they were established to serve. The uncertainty caused by the COVID-19 has millions of school-going children and the youth lagging behind. Those without access to internet, computers, reliable power connections, space to that. To study cannot access the online resource with their studies. Unfortunately, the Department of Basic Education could not give the safety of this. This was made more difficult due to the department's failure to provide sufficient schools, and as always,
Honorable Chairperson.
Chair, I'm back. I think there was a problem with the connection. As I'm saying right now, that the majority of our young people are confronted with connectivity issues, which is exactly what we're experiencing. And we find the department continuing and taking our children back to school of our country debate. While we all have been affected by the pandemic, it is the vulnerable and the marginalized who are most likely to be at the risk of the COVID-19. The poor, those that are poor who live in rural South Africa, and those living with HIV, our youth with disabilities, and adolescents, girls, young women, and our homeless youth will suffer most as they already experience challenges in accessing education, healthcare, and social protection. Every day we get reports of missing young women and girls who have lost their lives to gender-based violence and femicide, often at the hands of young men whom they say that they love and they trust. This reflects the absence of respect of human rights and the right to life. Of further concern, it is the lifting of the ban of the sale of alcohol. During these challenging times, young people are forced to remain indoors and by extension have nowhere to run in cases where alcohol abuse leads to violence and abusive behavior. How then can we grow South Africa together through this difficult period of a pandemic. The IFP believes that an active citizenship is the duty of all young South Africans. Through history, we as the South African youth have shown that it is possible through a united, active citizenship. The IFP is committed to creating spaces for young people to cultivate a strong sense of citizenship and responsibility for themselves, but also for their communities, based on self-help and the spirit of Ubuntu calls for a collective effort, particularly in difficult times like this one. This is also the time for young people to exercise their right to vote. According to the IEC registration drive in 2018, 6 million eligible voters under the 30 years of age did not register to vote. The IFP encourages the young people to use their vote to demand change and
Honorable Member, I've given you 2 seconds more. Your time has expired now.
They cannot.
Yeah. Honorable Member, your time has expired.
Hungry, tired, they risk their lives because they are poor sanitation. Because of the poor.
Honorable, no. Honorable Member, your time has expired. I know there's difficulty with connection. We sympathize with you. That's why we gave you 10 seconds more. But your time is expired now. Okay. Thank you very much.
People are presiding.
No. Honorable Brett, take over. That's the only way you can let him know that we are moving now.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. South Africa has failed its youth, and our government has failed us. Honourable Chairperson, the EFF, I suggest, go get a history lesson.
What are you raising, Honourable Member? Just hold on, Honourable Brett.
The fact of the matter is that it is not because of apartheid, and it is not because of white people that our youth of today are currently suffering.
Honourable
it is because of the ANC-led government that
Honourable
our youth are suffering today.
Order.
And they should...
Order. Just hold on. Yes, Honourable Member.
I want to raise a point of order.
What's the point of order, sir?
Chairperson, the background that Honourable Breed is using is not the official background that was supplied to parliamentarians. They must change to the official background of parliamentarians in order for her to continue speaking. That is not the official.
Honourable members, this ruling has been made, and I expect that members will be able to do it, and we proceed as agreed. Yeah. I don't know what he saw there. Go ahead, Honourable Breed.
Thank you, Honourable Chairperson. The fact of the matter is that the EFF needs to get the facts straight and needs to go and look at history. Because on 16 June, it was the start of the British colonialist scorched earth policy that saw more than 41,000 South African women and children, yes, Honourable EFF, black and white students, children murdered. So rather get your facts straight and focus on what is actually the issue. But Chairperson, to get back to this. Die ANC skets prentjie van sukses en vier elke jaar die suksesse van 1976. Maar as jy werklik gaan kyk na wat met die jeug van 2020 gebeur, dan sal jy sien dat hulle word gijslaers gehou. Die jeug van vandag het steeds moedertaal onderrig nie. 'n Sesotho sprekende seentjie in Bloemfontein kan nog steeds nie die taal van sy eie skool gaan van graad R tot matriek nie. En dan nog, daar waar ons moedertaal onderrig het, kwyn dit in die hande van LER, so Spanjaza Lesotho. Daar is skole wat in 26 jaar van ANC-regering ook nog nie water en spoeltoilette het nie, en moes hulle in der haas gedurende hierdie krisis water en sanitasie by hierdie skole aanbring. We also see that government is bragging about how fast they did this. But Honourable Chairperson, this is a fallacy, because those schools should have had water and sanitation 26 years ago. The youth of today still do not have equal opportunities. They are still, as the class of 76, judged by the color of their skin. Their socioeconomic circumstances are not being used when we talk of youth empowerment. And the President, during his Youth Day address, made mention of how the youth are the agents of change. And that youth will play a pivotal role with the post-COVID-19 economic environment in South Africa. And I agree with the President. But the following needs to happen for us to see that change. Government must create a conducive environment for this, where youth have equal opportunities, where there is economic growth and creating jobs opportunities, where the youth are free from the past, and where there is unity in our diversity. Chairperson, youth unemployment was estimated at a 58% average. This means that youth in South Africa are tormented, and that students in countries that have civil war have more job opportunities than current youth within South Africa. This is an absolute disgrace. And yet our government cannot pull out all the stops to actually see this number improved. The President also acknowledged that social status should not be a barrier for the youth. But Chairperson, then the government needs to stop paying lip service and start acting. We need to see legislation changed to ensure that all South Africans have a chance to help build the economy, especially post-COVID-19. We need to see that government is serious about youth empowerment and not just focus on certain youths, but rather on all youth that are willing and able to help South Africa get back on track. We need to ensure a government that sets a political climate there that is conducive for business. After all, Chairperson, as the President also said, a country that invests in its youth invests in its future. And therefore, Chairperson, I want to challenge the ANC. I want to challenge you to be bold. I want to challenge you to stand up for all of South Africa. And I want to challenge you to make legislation there that creates equal opportunities and promotes job creation for all. Chairperson, I thank you.
Honorable member is done. Okay. Honorable Sukers, ACDP.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It is numerically significant today in commemorating the Soweto Uprising of 1976 that we are the 6th Parliament 26 years after the advent of democracy in the year 2020. The number 6 is the number of man, creation, and we are standing at the beginning of a new decade. COVID-19 has exposed how far we truly came in addressing equality and injustice at an economic and social level. In looking back at history and the role of young people to drive change, we should ask ourselves what our legacy will be in the face of economic challenges that could only deepen poverty, injustice, and inequality for most of our young people in this country. Do we, as a generation of leaders, still walk the same fault lines to see the color of the skin rather than the color of the blood? Do we still fight today only for class or color rather than for all South Africa? The challenges we face demands that we unify as a nation against the enemies that does not seek out the color of your skin. Our history is one of segregation and injustice, resulting in generational poverty. But our future demands reconciliation and justice to ensure prosperity for all people. When we decide to respond to the inequality in our education system, which is an injustice against humanity, then only will we overcome the barriers to learning and advancement that faces millions of young South Africans. It is only when we answer as one people in the fight against lawlessness, which is robbing our young men and women of their lives, that we win against the enemy of violence that ravages our cities, townships, and rural farm areas. We have a responsibility as a generation to leave a legacy that can be celebrated by the generations to come. Reconciliation is the legacy that South Africa gifted the world in 1994. Today, 26 years after the birth of our democracy, how unified are we really in order to enable us to tackle the economic challenges that threatens the quality of life of millions of South African people? COVID-19, gender-based violence, and poverty are the giants of our time. These are the giants that call out our names. Are we honestly ready to face the challenges as one people? Or are we today as divided as we were in 1976? It is time for us to unite our efforts and sustainably restore our forgotten and left behind communities through social programs that address the gaps of fatherlessness and its impact on the young men we raise. The ACDP believes that skills development must be instituted at a community level with a focus on technology that is geared towards the demands of the fourth industrial revolution.
Dankie asseblief, u se tyd is nou oor. Baie dankie. Honorable August, good. It's your turn. Please pay attention to the time allocated to yourself. As presiding officers, we play no role in that. So we enforce your agreement here. And so please, just, I'm not talking to you only, Honorable August, in advance. All the subsequent speakers must do the same, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Nat.
Honorable Chairperson, yesterday was not a good youth day. Our youth are enduring the toughest time since the birth of our democracy. I'm angry and sad as many South Africans are. Our youth are giving up on life. They are sitting on the streets, unemployed and unable to get jobs. Every day we hear another young woman or girl attacked, raped, mutilated, murdered. Your daughter or partner could be next. Families live in fear and have become mentally programmed to deal with it. This is not okay. We have all heard horrible stories where families in between meals have to duck down and lay on the floor when hearing gunshots. We hear of boys and young men shot down in the prime of their life. Another gang killing, another child hit by a stray bullet, another funeral. The overwhelming majority of these crimes are committed by men. Somebody's son, somebody's father, somebody's brother, somebody's husband or boyfriend. Honorable Deputy Speaker, we must stop teaching our boys that they are superior to girls. We must stop teaching them that they think they're more important than their sisters. We must stop teaching them that their physical strength determines their ranking at home or in their communities. We must stop teaching them that being kind is a sign of weakness. We must stop teaching them to be bullies. The idea is neither far-fetched nor unachievable. It starts in our own homes, with our own families, instilling the values young people need to grow up, be responsible and respectable adults, and it ripples out from there. Only days ago we heard of Kervin Fortune, a dance choreographer who was prominent in the LGBTI community, stabbed by a 14-year-old girl. He is dead. In Belhar, a 27-year-old mother and a 7-year-old daughter was stabbed in their home. They now are dead. Mikhail Amos, a 24-year-old male, was killed by a stray bullet during a drive-by shooting in Parkwood on Saturday. A 3-year-old boy was shot in his father's arms in Lavendale, also over the weekend. The boy is dead, his dad survived and lived with the pain. The province's violence statistics are horrendous. Citizens young and old are scared to walk the streets, go to school, even sleep at night. We regularly hear from police that more members are being deployed to the most dangerous areas like the Cape Flats. Where are they? Fantastic numbers are thrown around. They make it sound like matters are in hand. Where are they? In any case, statistics on police deployment contain grey areas. They generally speak not just to numbers of feet on the street, but include administrative staff, members of the VIP and other units, and detectives, to name a few. The police should show us real numbers, how many police are on the front lines per number of the population in each of our suburbs and townships. These numbers will tell us they are capable of providing safety. The community cannot...
Honorable August, as you notice, is a date is no over.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Honorable Kwankwa. Honorable members, stop being ageist across the benches here. Please.
Honorable Speaker, Honorable Deputy Speaker, and honorable members, we will always be reminded of the bravery of the young people of 1976 who took to the streets of South Africa to fight a system of injustice, prejudice, inequality, racism, sexism, and suppression. They remain our guiding light even today as we still fight some of these very same battles. I remind you that Lord Charles Acton once said, "If the past has been an obstacle and a burden, knowledge of the past is the safest emancipation," end quote. But we must not let the shadows of our dark past, rather we must not let shadows of our past to darken the doorstep of our future. Just as we reap the benefits of the class of 1976's bravery, 44 years later we must also be brave. Currently, much of our public debate centers on human rights and dignity, as well as the excessive use of force by state security organs. Even if this debate causes anger, frustration, and discomfort, we cannot afford to shy away from it. We must talk about these things openly as we strive for social cohesion in South Africa. We as a nation must recognize that lives matter, whether it be a woman or man, old or young. There is no time and place where there can be an exception. Lives matter, Black lives matter, and they matter all the time. Sorry. Okay. Honorable members, as we celebrate Youth Month, we must take stock and realize that 26 years into our democracy, South Africa still ranks as one of the most unequal societies in the world, with formerly oppressed still having no opportunities and living in poverty and conditions of squalor. Reports indicate that youth unemployment is expected to rise at a staggering 70% by the end of the year 2020. We readily found ourselves in a socio-economic crisis, which has now been deepened by the consequences of COVID-19 and the necessary lockdown. But we must not look past the opportunity it has created, which is to reset the economy in favor of young people and the previously marginalized. We must, however, get past the stumbling blocks that hamper our young people's progress. As it stands, our education system does not adequately prepare our youth for the future or the job market. It needs a massive overhaul. There must be greater focus on building young people to be job creators, skilling them to, for instance, be innovators and artisans, work the land and produce food, start small businesses that can grow. Such a transformed education system must also speak to today's needs, considering the current industrial revolution. In this regard, Malcolm X gave us a valuable advice when he said, and I quote, "Education is the passport to the future, for tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today."
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. That's the right place to stop. Honorable Masraouli. Don't be superstitious, Honorable Kwankwa. It's a clock. That's how it works.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, this year we celebrate the centenary of the birth of two heroes of our struggle, Comrade Harry Gwala and Uomrei Mhlaba. We in the ANC are blessed because, unlike the brand new political parties, we have stalwarts who are wells of wisdom from which we drink. I have chosen to dedicate this speech to Ubaba Harry Gwala, the Lion of the Midlands. I do so fully conscious that this is a youth debate. President Mandela has this to say in his funeral. If Mpepeta was sometimes too blunt, it is because he knew that enemies of the people were spending sleepless nights to plot the undoing of the organization. He paid a special attention to the problems of the youth and the poorest of the poor. Mpepetwa knew that Inkunzi is a Matole. For the benefit of those who don't understand isiZulu, Madiba was saying, the bull is among the calves. Deputy Speaker, I'm quoting these words because, like Ubaba Ukwala, I intend to be blunt when addressing matters of the youth. I will call things by their names. I will do so because I believe that the mission of our generation is to end the system that leaves 58% of the youth in our country unemployed. With the fallout of COVID-19, this number will rise. The crisis of youth unemployment is not as a result of natural disaster like an earthquake or indeed coronavirus. It is fundamentally the legacy of colonialism and apartheid. I know that a lot of media commentators and some political parties have constructed a myth that because apartheid was formally ended in 1994, it has no impact on young South African. I say that is hogwash. If this were true, why is there Black Lives Matter movement in the United States when the Civil Rights Act that gave Americans their full citizenship rights was passed in 1964? Why were the two black men, George Floyd and Rayshard Brooks, recently murdered in full glare of the public by the racist policemen? The reality is that the legacy of slavery, lynching, lack of access to land and property, and inferior education, etc., continue to hinder the progress of generations of black people in the richest country in the world. As a principled analysis of our present social and economic crisis must be grounded on historical and material realities. Deputy Speaker, we still have in our democratic parliament political parties like the Freedom Front Plus and the DA that exist unapologetically for one purpose only: the preservation of white privilege. White privilege in South Africa was not earned through white excellence. It was stolen like the land and mineral wealth at the end of the barrel of a gun. As the ANC, we acknowledge that within the white community, there have been patriots such as the late Istwalandwe Siaparankwe, our beloved Dennis Goldberg and Professor Ben Turok, both of whom passed away this year. They fought on the side of the oppressed. They shunned the privileges they were born into as whites. We say to them, Lalan Ngokolo Makawe, Umkhonto wesizwe. Our mineral wealth was exported as raw material, which were used together with slave labor to industrialize the economies of our former colonial masters, primarily
Point of order, Deputy Speaker.
What are you raising on?
Member Walters on the virtual just opened the mic and started speaking without you giving her mic. Walters.
No,
can you please call that member to order? Because
no, it's out of order in the first place. That's why I ignored them, because you can't just do that. Please, yeah.
That is the fundamental reason for the current underdevelopment and structural...
Honorable Mahlaule, just hold on.
Thanks, Chair. Can you be very fair in applying this? Since we've had virtual sittings, Minister Lindiwe Daphne Zulu has been interrupting meetings at every single sitting with nothing being said by the Chair. So can you please tell her also to just keep quiet and listen?
But you are misrepresenting the truth. I ruled on that matter here. I did. You are misrepresenting the truth, and you are an honorable member. You mustn't do that. Please go ahead, Honorable Mahlaule. I think, yeah.
That is the fundamental reason for the current underdevelopment and structural unemployment in our country and the continent. Deputy Speaker, the ANC takes full responsibility for our government's policy choices, both successful and not so successful. The ANC government has implemented policy interventions to break the cycle of intergenerational poverty. This includes the massive investment in education and skills. More than 90% of children are in school, a far higher enrollment rate than in most other developing countries. Spending on education has increased tremendously after 1994, from 32 billion to over 300 billion currently. As a proportion of the national budget, our education budget is among the highest in the world, higher than the UK and the US. The evidence of the success of this investment is the spectacular growth of the black middle strata that has grown fourfold since 1994. Incidentally, Deputy Speaker, I have noticed that the beneficiaries of our investment in education don't wear overalls and gumboots at their graduation ceremonies. They wear expensive designer clothes and shoes. Our government has rolled out massive community work programs that provide skills and crucial employment for the poor. We need greater alignment of skills development to national development priorities, as well as innovation to unleash the talents and creativity of the youth. Deputy Speaker, government has implemented programs that facilitate entrepreneurship, development, and empower the youth to start their own businesses. However, these have not fundamentally altered the social and economic realities. Because we have been weak in this regard, the likes of Honorable Briet, who would be regarded in many countries as a fringe right-wing crackpot, are able to stand here and lecture us. Our generation is called upon to address decisively the causes of black intergenerational poverty, the exclusion of our young people and women from owning productive land and property, and access to finance, and among the fundamental barriers. In order to address this, the ANC must speed up the expropriation of land without compensation and radically transform the financial sector so that our country is able to finance the entrepreneurship revolution we are going to unleash in our lifetime. The transformation measures must include the establishment of a state bank to drive growth in economic sectors in which the youth participate, demonopolizing and diversifying the financial sector through youth-owned stokvels, financial cooperatives, regional and sector banks that support SMMEs and cooperatives, low-cost financing for youth business ventures, banking facilities that are pro-youth-owned business and affordable, simplifying access to development finance institutions for youth in townships and villages, increasing the procurement spent by government and large corporates in youth-owned enterprises, if needs be, through legislation. In conclusion, Deputy Speaker, we were not deployed here to keep polite company with conservatives like Mr. Steenhuisen, Mrs. Briet. We are here to continue the revolution on a different platform. Thank you very much.
Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Sure, Mika, sure.
Honorable Member.
Give mute.
Order, honorable members. Honorable Sheikh is ready to...
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Let us first of all start off by asking ourselves, what happened in 1976? And I think we seem to be running away from that very, very important event that took place. Over 176, and it's estimated over 700 had lost their lives. Why did they lose their lives? Because they were rebelling against the oppressor who were marginalizing them in terms of Bantu education, restricting them to the medium of Afrikaans. Now, 44 years later, that platform was set in 1976, and that's the sacrifice many of them made. And let me reiterate, there was nothing to do with race. All these youth that stood and fought side by side stood as the youth with a common purpose, is ensuring that the youth of today have a better quality of life, that your education is free, it is fair, it is transparent, and it is equal. Now the question that we ask is, with 18 million youth in South Africa, are we continuing from where we left off in 1976? And allow me, Honorable Deputy Speaker, to express my disappointment. You didn't have the education there, now you're getting the education, but the very same facilities you are getting now, which you didn't get before, you want to burn and destroy them. You want to follow those that are manipulating, even though you can see loud and clear how corrupt they are. The 1976 youth fought against that, but today you want to follow those leaders that are corrupt and you do nothing. And one ideal example is that VBS Bank. You know what has happened, but yet blindly you go out there and you want to support these things. Let's look at gender-based violence in the country. It is the youth, the women and the children that are suffering. But where is the 18 million youth in the South Africa that are supposed to protect these women and children? Nowhere to be seen. I want to say to the youth of South Africa, you need to rise. You need to rise again, but you need to rise for the right reasons. You need to protect those women and children. You need to have the highest level of morality. You are dropping off 60% in the first year of university. Is that acceptable? It's not acceptable. Let's follow what happened in 1976. Let's stand together. You are the future of this country. Do not allow politicians and political parties to divide you on race. Those that divide you on race are helpless and have got nothing to offer you. Because in this country before, it was all races that stood together. Yes, indeed, even blacks oppressed the blacks. Let us not run away from that, and let us admit that. Let us come together as the united nation. Let's try and defend and protect the poorest of the poor. Thank you very much.
Honorable
One speech.
Hayi usizele mathupha namhlanje baba Ntshayisa.
Is it correct now?
Yeah.
Sure. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I think, Honorable Mashaule,
Honorable members in the front benches here, these front benches are having a wrong influence on you. Keep calm, please.
The Deputy Speaker, the formation of AIC cannot be combated now, breaking away of Lucifer from God. In other words, now we still claim heroes like Tate Mandela and others because we're part and parcel of ANC before. Deputy Speaker, I think it is never late now because I want to convey condolences to the families of all those who lost their young ones during this COVID-19 and all Also, a special appeal to our youth today to refrain from the abuse of alcohol. They should also do away should fight against the gender-based violence. They should guard against the social ills and fight the collapse.
Honorable Abrams.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Parliament's youth debate theme this year is about growing South Africa together. But how do we grow when our soil is toxic, women and children unable to blossom? We wake up in South Africa anxious and afraid for our future, afraid of waking up unemployed, afraid of raising a child in South Africa, more so a girl child. We could lock our doors and stay inside, protected from the invisible threat of COVID-19. But locked doors can't keep us safe when the threat is already inside. This feeling of fear and anxiety makes sense when South Africa ranks one of the most dangerous countries in the world, where some men rape and murder women and children. ANC youth policies and programs are failing. Youth are still turning to violence for the answer, to suicide for the answer, to drugs and gangsterism for the answer, to blessers for the answer. We can understand why, because in South Africa, it seems a diploma does not pay, crime and corruption does. Young people, are you still waiting for your SASSA 350 grant? Did your clinic run out of contraceptives 3 months ago? Are your younger siblings hungry because this ANC government refuses to open school feeding programs as well as ECD centers? Are you exposed to predators walking free out of prison on parole or presidential pardon? The argument that politics does not affect you is dead. We should not continue to inherit the sin of our father. This ANC government is paralyzed by its own infightings and incapabilities. Promises will remain empty. The Western Cape government has appointed the very first Children's Commissioner in South Africa to directly engage young people, a function every province must have. 1.2 million meals served by school feeding programs during lockdown in the Western Cape. 1 billion rand made available to fight crime where SAPS is failing. The DA understands that we cannot pursue opportunities if we cannot move and without fear in society. Drakensberg municipality has already implemented food e-vouchers, while ANC ministers, like Minister Zulu, still finds herself surprised that COVID-19 is devastating the poor. In South Africa, young people make up almost 35% of this country's population. Surely Parliament and elective office and public office should be more representative of this majority. Young people, your constitutional right to vote and seek elective office is how you become active citizens in setting a social climate free of violence, free of fear, conducive for our own successes. The youth hustle does indeed continue.
Thank you. Honorable Masiko.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. It is an honor and a privilege for me to participate in this youth debate, as yesterday we marked 44 years since the Soweto student uprising that took place on the 16th of June, 1976. June 16 is a day that ushered decisive turning point in the liberation struggle in South Africa. Today, we stand in this very parliament as young people representing the African National Congress, owing to the sacrifices and contributions made by the gallant fighters and patriots on whose shoulders we stand. They made it possible for us to live the dream of freedom for which they themselves paid the ultimate price. As we honor the memory and salute the 1976 generation, we rededicate ourselves to achieving the goals they sacrificed so much for. In further commemorating their sacrifice, we must remain fully cognizant of the fact that June 16 generation was diverse in character and in content. We must acknowledge the critical role played by young women of the 1976 generation in the fight against white supremacist education. Honorable Deputy Speaker, today we remember the names and identities of young women who seldom ever appear even when victims of the 16 June massacre are evoked in public dialogues. We remember the female students who were shot and killed at various places around Soweto when the uprising began, whose identity remain a mystery till today. We raise our revolutionary fist in honor of Hamina Loraka, a young woman who on 17 June 1976 was shot dead in Deep Kloof. Her name, like many other young women who died, is unknown. We raise our revolutionary fist to the young woman Antoinette Sithole, who is seen in the famous image of photographer Sam Zima, known to many as the sister to Hector Peterson. Antoinette Sithole, like many other young nameless women, made a conscious decision to protest on the day. We again raise our revolutionary fist and afford historical importance to Sibongile Makhabela, the only woman who was an executive member of the Soweto Student Representative Council and General Secretary of the South African Student Movement that planned and organized the 16 June uprising. Mkhabela, like many others, is least spoken about and relatively less known. Through the young people of South Africa, their contributions and sacrifices for the Liberation Project will be registered in our collective national consciousness and memory. In keeping with the vision of 1976 generation, I can state without any fear of contradiction that, as a country and government, we have registered significant progress in the promotion of youth empowerment and gender equality. An array of measures introduced since 1994 to promote youth empowerment and uphold gender equality have drastically improved the position and conditions of youth and women in our country. Today, young people occupy influential positions in government and the private sector and play an important role in decision-making processes. The living conditions of the majority of ordinary youth have undergone significant qualitative changes. We are encouraged by this development. We do, however, believe that more still needs to be done. Honorable Deputy Speaker, the ANC Constitution articulates non-sexist policies that have deeply influenced the Constitution of the Republic. The entrenched Bill of Rights extends to all the people the right to equality before the law, the right to human dignity, the right to life, and the right to freedom and security. It is, however, disheartening to know that women walking free in the streets and children playing safely in open spaces seems to be a distant vision that is yet to be realized. Patriarchy remains a cancer eating the women of our society and takes the ugly form of gender-based violence and femicide. Every day, we awake to news of a woman slain, usually in the hands of her lover. One of the adverse manifestations of the lockdown has been the unprecedented rise in gender-based violence and femicide cases. Women continue to be killed and abused. Recently, a number of young women have been brutally murdered. 28-year-old Tejo Pule was gruesomely murdered and hanged by her lover. Saneli Siwe Mfaba was found dead in a field and was brutally murdered by her boyfriend. 26-year-old Lady Pagindao was grisly hacked with an axe and succumbed to death. Honorable members, Violence against women and girls is the most prevalent violation of human rights. It knows no color, no creed, no social standing. One cannot believe that during the only month in the year where we are supposed to be celebrating young people and their contribution to building our country, we are instead talking about how they are being brutally murdered in their own communities. The violence against women and children needs to stop. We welcome government's expression to amend the Domestic Violence Act to better protect gender-based violence victims and Sexual Offences Act to broaden the categories of sex offenders and passing of laws that will tighten bail for gender-based violence and sex offenders. We urge and call society, especially men, to stand up against gender-based violence and femicide and learn to confront and engage their male counterparts. We applaud the African National Congress-led government for enacting a framework to guide gender-responsive planning, budgeting, monitoring, evaluation, and auditing, which is imperative in achieving the country's constitutional vision of a non-sexist society. It is aimed at ensuring better outcomes for women and girls and more tangible impacts in South Africa. Honorable Speaker, as we try to open opportunities for young people, we must also keep an eye on issues of drug abuse and the scourge of alcohol abuse, which have a potential to reverse the gains we are making. Almost all parts of South Africa are engulfed by cheap drugs, which are sold mainly to young people. It is crucial to note the significant harms that are related to alcohol abuse on individuals and society as a whole. Intoxication leads to loss of control and lack of capacity. The relationship between alcohol abuse and the perpetration of gender-based violence is of particular concern. As South Africans, we need to fight hand in hand with government and communities, political parties, traditional council, churches, law enforcement agencies, and parents to fight gender-based violence as well as drug and alcohol abuse. To the women who came before us, we stand tall on your shoulders. Thank you for your contributions that you have made for those of us privileged enough to be free. Let us intensify, in honor of the youth of 1976, the work we do for youth, women, and working poor. Lastly, Umama Ushalot Makleke taught us not to live above our people when she said, "This work is not for yourselves. Kill that spirit of self. Do not live above your people, but live with them. And if you rise, bring someone with you." I thank you.
Thank you.
Malibongwe.
Thank you.
Malibongwe.
Before Honorable Nyanso comes over,
Malibongwe.
there is Honorable Abraham PN who has his hand up. And what is the reason for that? If you are not able to speak immediately, whatever your thoughts are, we haven't provided for a Q&A. We proceed to Honorable Nyonso of the PAC. Go ahead, Ndati. We're just making sure that we are not skipping someone who is about to call us to order.
Deputy Speaker, June 16 is an important calendar date. It is an appointment with social history, where social consciousness of a suppressed people rises into social activity and make material history to stand up against suppression and restrictions on the right to call our souls our own. For the PAC, we have written the social history with our blood. On June 16, 1974, the Pretoria Central Prison executed 4 young people, namely Thomas Mutlaehi, Joas Mutsumi, Peter Nchwele, and Richard Mutsahaye, responding to the national call-up of 11 September 1961 when the Poko insurrection started. The security branch, police, the Bureau of State Security, and other intelligence operations linked up the Soweto youth uprising that started on June 76 as a total onslaught by the PAC underground structures, as a memorial revenge of the June 16, 1964 execution. PAC front organizations were taken into detention and 4 operatives were murdered, while others brutally tortured and maimed. The racist judiciary, media owners, big business, apartheid academics, and others started a vicious campaign to make the PAC a monster without head, as John Foster defined us after the passing of PAC President Robert Mangaliso Sobukwe. They began an investigation into PAC that started in 1963 in the prison dungeons. The PAC was subjected to a secret marathon trial with more than 200 witnesses with the aim to send Zephania Mutupeng and 17 co-accused to long-term on Robben Island maximum security prison. We are still here, Deputy Speaker. The PAC stood the test of time. Today, we make the connections of the late June 16, 1964 to the 16 June 1976 uprising to the 16 June 2020. Young people are facing a worldwide ugly phenomena of white supremacy that has seen the killing of George Floyd. The colonial mentality of the South African police and military to kill their own, like the murder of Collins Khosa in Alex. The youth face ugly monster of gender-based violence. The youth live in times of coronavirus. Consciousness awareness of the effects of material historical events in occupied Tanzania is a mobilizing tool to turn the new generation of youth into engineers of fourth industrial revolution, of the Internet of Things, and other digital mediums which are together turning swords of reactionary violence into plowshares to end poverty and inequality. We in parliaments must create a conducive climate for this eventuality by resolving the territorial rights of African people to their land and strengthening the right of self-determination. The weight of history is in our shoulders. We cannot fail in this historical mission. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Honorable Hendricks, Al-Jamal.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. Honorable Deputy Speaker, I wonder if I'm taking part in the right debate. So far, not one speaker has indicated what power they are going to give to the youth. Maybe we must wait for your leadership. I know we must mute our mics, but this debate has been muted. Honorable Deputy Speaker, His Excellency Cyril Ramaphosa asked the youth of today to take the lead for a post-COVID-19 economic recovery. Al-Jamaa hope he did not mean 45-year-olds in terms of the definition of youth of the African Union in the heads up. Soon after my maiden speech in the 6th Parliament, Al-Jamaa asked South African youth to get ready for a cyber civilization with roots in digital platforms. So it is up to those involved in classroom struggles to create next generation jobs and new revenue streams. Classroom struggles so that the youth can shape their future. The future is next generation jobs and new revenue streams. The next step for the 6th Parliament, Honourable Deputy Speaker, and its portfolio committees is to unleash the opportunities that comes with a 5G spectrum solely for business opportunities led by the youth. And they must put an end to the auctions they are planning for the past 7 years. That is the youth power which is the theme of this debate that is needed, as there is nothing else to give. Nothing else to give. Do you perhaps know, Deputy Speaker, of anything left to give to the youth? If so, then tell the nation. That is why Al-Jamaa is very disappointed with the President's Commission on the Fourth Industrial Revolution. They have come nowhere near making such an announcement. Don't they know that it's only young people that will lead South Africa into the Fourth Industrial Revolution? I know that because I was the first to welcome the 10-cent schoolboys from China when they came to South Africa and we exchanged presents. Those schoolboys are billionaires today and created millions of jobs. I was a teacher in 1976 at Mount View High in Hannibal Park on the Cape Flats, and my students spontaneously came out in support of the Soweto students. But this has never been acknowledged. The uprising in the Western Cape was as big as Soweto. We cannot celebrate June the 16th on the Cape Flats, as the Cape must still get freedom. While the rest of the country got its freedom in 1994, the Cape Flat was handed over by the apartheid government, not to the new ruling party, but to crime and gangsterism. And that is still the case today, as the ruling party's best endeavors has failed and there is no hope for the personal safety of residents on the Cape Flats after 26 years of democracy. The Western Cape youth are the most marginalized. I'm very not speaking to left, but to remind the country it is non-compliant with Article 14 of the Children's Charter is signed with the African Union on the rights to proper sanitation for the African child. Many schools are closed today because of this non-compliance, and it is time to report this breach. The African child in over 5,000 Yankee towns in Africa play in sewerage, learn in sewerage, and after the schools, sleep
your
in
time has
sewerage,
expired. Your time has expired, sir. I'm sorry. Honorable Nobo of the DA.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The government has failed the youth in this country. More than half of young people in South Africa today are without a job. The government has failed to provide quality education, training, and job opportunities for our young people, means that they remain locked out of opportunities. The truth of the matter is that this government has left today's youth behind. It has left young people like Mzamo behind, who is a young person that I met in Umzimkhulu in KwaZulu-Natal. He was born and raised in this community, attended the local schools where there is poor infrastructure, lack of water and sanitation. He told me that he has been struggling to get his carpentry business off the ground because he doesn't have the necessary support he needs to be successful. He has applied numerous times for funding from government institutions like the National Youth Development Agency, and yet he has never been successful. Mzamo's lived experiences are shared by many young people across the country who have been failed by this government. Honorable Deputy Speaker, many young persons with disabilities have also been neglected by this government. Some of them are sitting at home today with no prospects of a better future due to a shortage of special needs schools. Government's failure to equip young persons with disabilities with the resources and skills that they need has meant that they are not able to participate successfully in an inclusive economy. As the Democratic Alliance, we believe that there are immediate solutions that the government must implement to break down the barriers that keep young people locked out of opportunities. Our The Youth Hustle Continues campaign serves to highlight the solutions to problems facing young people today. We must recognize and support young informal traders. In that way, we will be able to ensure that there is economic inclusion of young people. The government must also ensure that young people have access to data so that they can gain access to the internet. Rolling out a national job centers project will be a great initiative where unemployed young people can access the internet, be able to search a centralized jobs database, get help in compiling their CVs, print out documents, and even complete short courses in fields like digital training, entrepreneurship, project management, and many more. This initiative will also help young people who stay in rural areas and have no access to the internet. As we reflect today on the sacrifices made by the youth in the history of our country, let us also look to the future and empower our youth with the resources and skills they need to build a better future.
Thank you, sir.
Young people are the present and the future of this country.
Your time has expired. Thank you. Honorable Deputy Minister of Higher Education and Training. Ndate Manamel. Ndate Manamel. Bua le rona.
Okay, I
I muted myself. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker, honourable members. George Floyd's eventual murder is the spark for massive protests in cities and towns across the United States and the globe. Racism, police brutality, inequality, and the value of black lives are the triggers of these protests under the catalytic Black Lives Matter movement.
Mr. Koza.
At the forefront of these protests are young people who imagine and yearn for a better world. Just like the youth of June 16, 1976, they too are tired of racism, brutality, and inequality at the foot of their necks. We are seeing courageous young women and men reclaim their space as they demonstrate the transformative power of young people. Of course, South Africa is no stranger to transformative power. We saw it in the 76 generation, in the young lions of the 80s, in the students activists of the 2000s, and as we see it in the technopreneurs of the 2020s. South Africa has witnessed gallant young people using their transformative power to shape history and destiny. However, with the onset of COVID-19, youth are particularly at risk, especially vulnerable and marginalized youth. Youth in rural areas, adolescents, girls and young women, young people living with HIV/AIDS, young people of different sexual orientations and gender identities, and homeless youth already experience challenges in accessing healthcare services and social protection. Young people with physical or mental conditions face an elevated risk in relation to COVID-19. The pandemic and economic hardship may further fuel stigma and discrimination against certain groups of young people. When economic hard times come, young people are hit the hardest. Despite this difficult situation, armies of young people are on the front lines of the battle against COVID-19. Young doctors, young nurses, young community healthcare workers screening, testing, nursing, and treating our communities. Young social workers are counseling and supporting vulnerable families and individuals. Students and unemployed youth are volunteering their time to distribute food parcels to the most marginalized. Young activists at the forefront of social media campaigns, creating awareness and providing credible information on COVID-19. In the face of this COVID-19 brute force, young people are standing their ground, putting up a fight, and using their transformative youth power to defeat the pandemic. COVID-19 has deeply affected the higher education sector, halting face-to-face learning and contact. All institutions have developed their detailed strategies for remote multimodal teaching and learning during the period of the current lockdown and for all the levels. We've emphasized to all the institutions that no student must be left behind. We're trying to find better ways to implement effective multimodal augmented remote learning system by considering the use of space science and Earth observation technologies and platforms in support of our plans to reach vulnerable students. We want to save the academic year 2020 and also save lives. Higher education is too important to be overpowered by COVID-19 or anything else. Therefore, we're expanding access to higher education by building 9 new TVET college campuses and a new university in Ekurhuleni. It is for this reason that we've multiplied our NSFAS investments in young people attaining higher education. These investments have been expanded to include tuition, textbooks, and living allowances. Over the past 3 years, NSFAS has funded 675,500 students in 2018, increasing that number to 721,000 students in 2019 and 691,000 students in 2020. The 2020 figures will increase with second semester enrollments, which means that we may attain an even higher number of students in our universities and TVET colleges being funded by the National Student Financial Aid Scheme, which deals with the lies that has been spread out there that the NSFAS is failing. For the 2019-2021 period, government will invest about 80 billion to ensure that prospective students from poor and working class families have access to higher education and training. The president also announced that we are going to spend 64 billion over the next year in student accommodation and will leverage at least another 64 billion in private investment. There are currently more than 7,000 new beds under development. A further 11,400 beds are at project planning stage. 6 more large projects comprising 15,000 beds are also part of the feasibility for 2020-2021. This is significant investment to address the backlog in student housing and represent government's steadfast commitment to higher education. While COVID-19 may have set us back, it has not defeated us. It has not defeated the will and resolve of young people to change society for the better and develop themselves in the process. Youth power is not fading, it is soldiering on and becoming more powerful. And I've heard one of the honorable members saying he hasn't had anyone saying how are they going to give power to the youth. The youth have the innate power and ability to transform and change. And Honorable Briet just tried earlier on to give us a false history of what happened in 1976, June 16, by telling us that it was about British colonialism and all of that. It is the young people of 1976 who came out and protested against the apartheid system. And yes, I hear you saying 26 years, we haven't done as we should have, as it relates to, for instance, ablution facilities in some of the schools. But what you forget is that the youth of 76 had to go out and fight an ugly apartheid system for them to have access to all of those things, to have access to education that was inferior, education that was, even in the worst of conditions compared to where we are now. It is unturning hundreds of years of exploitation of black people, Honorable Briet, that you should not wipe out of your self-constructed history, precisely because it is people like you who want to rewrite our history and project the current dispensation as solely being the responsibility of the ANC government, and forgetting that the wounds that were inflicted by the apartheid system are still visible on the bodies of thousands and hundreds and thousands of young people in the streets. And as I said, that young people are soldiering on and becoming more powerful in the streets of the US, to Mzansi campuses, shop floors and boardrooms. Youth power is rising to challenge racism, poverty, inequality, and COVID-19. Our presence and future is in good hands, in our view, and we believe that young people need to continue to play that role and not become the backbenchers and not be mobilized into violent protest that destroys property, which is what we predominantly hear, but that young people need to be mobilized and galvanized to become part of the transformative power that we need post this COVID-19, because it is only through the power that we saw in 76, the power that we saw in the 80s, the power that we saw with young people coming out into the street, complementing and raising concerns around how the democratic government is going on bad. We are going to continue to be committed to giving youth the power that they deserve and ensure that they become the transformative power that society requires. Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you very much, Honorable Manamela. Honorable members, that concludes the debate. And the Secretary will read.
All right, so, well, there you have it. That's the Youth Day debate taking place in Parliament. We had about 18 speakers from all the different parties represented in the National Assembly, debating under the theme Youth Power, Growing South Africa Together in a Time of COVID-19. A whole lot of speakers there raising the challenges that the young people still face in the country. Many of them saying that young people now should draw inspiration from the youth of 1976, some of them saying that they don't want anything for the youth without the youth themselves are taking part in it. One speaker spoke about the killing of women that is currently happening, gender-based violence, saying that it will have to end and the young people should be at the center of confronting gender-based violence. The issue of unemployment as well, one saying that the young people are losing hope, and that's where we started seeing some exchange of words between the EFF, after a member of parliament from the Freedom Front Plus raised an issue regarding the background picture that the members of parliament were using, and that issue, although got resolved by the Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, Lechisa Tsenudide. So a whole range of issues, some going as far as saying that youth policies in the country are failing. So in South Africa, when you have qualifications, you cannot get paid for that, but crime does pay for you if you are a South African. And at the end of that discussion, you had Butima Namela from the ANC, who says that youth power is visible everywhere. That's in a nutshell what came out of that Youth Day debate from the National Assembly. Let's take a quick break here on SA Today.